Recently, I finished a video on the Dragon Ball Super Gallery, which was a collaboration seeing 42 artists redraw the covers of Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball. Throughout this collab, I did a bunch of research on different artists, which included delving into their relationships with Toriyama, and one of the more interesting relationships I found was the one between him and Masakazu Katsura. Tragically, during this collaboration, Akira Toriyama passed away, turning an otherwise chirpy collab which celebrated Dragon Ball into something more of a pictorial eulogy for Toriyama. Seeing these artists who hadn't drawn a cover yet share stories and memories about Dragon Ball or Toriyama himself, with a lot of them being pretty heartwarming and heartbreaking. Masakazu Katsura was without a doubt one of these. Tasked with being the penultimate artist of the collab, he was also set to redraw the series' first cover, but comparatively, Katsura was one of the least known artists of the collab, especially to Western manga audiences. So why was he given such a special cover to redraw? Firstly, a brief overview of Katsura. He, like Toriyama, worked in Shonen Jump, creating manga throughout the early 80s, debuting with Wingman, while Dr.Slump was being serialized in 1983. Post this, Katsura would unleash a string of hits within the magazine like Video Girl I, DNA Squared, and Ease, usually focusing on rom-coms with a lot of drama and some erotic elements. Katsura had a few shorter or flopped series too, with Shokido in Vanda, Present from Lemon, and Shadow Lady as well, overall making him a very prolific Shonen Jump mangaka whose works filled the magazine throughout the 80s and 90s. Unlike Toriyama, Katsura's art veered in almost the opposite direction, looking towards realism, his characters especially looking more and more human as he progressed throughout his career. Alongside this, depictions of detailed interiors and other objects would permeate his work, which contrasts Toriyama's penchant for stylization and simplification. Toriyama would deform his characters a lot, as well as objects like machinery, giving way to a very distinct style. While both couldn't be further apart, I think they both have an eye for including immense amount of detail in their manga regardless of art style. So Masakazu Katsura was a very successful Shonen Jump artist, which made him perfect for this collab, but there's an even stronger reason as to why he was involved and why he illustrated the first cover specifically, and that's due to his personal ties to Toriyama. The first instance of me coming across their friendship was Katsura's comment for the collab, as alongside the actual redraw, we got some words from each artist, which are usually about their connections to Dragon Ball or Toriyama. I'll read out what Katsura had to say. I am the man who kept getting in the way of Dragon Ball's writing with really dumb phone calls, ones that started late in the night and went on until the wee hours of the morning. I mean, technically I wasn't really getting in the way per se, but midway through our calls, I would just casually ask, "What are you doing?" and would always be really shocked when he answered, Oh, I'm doing the storyboards." He really was amazing. I wonder what kind of brains Toriyama-san had floating up there on that noggin. Dragon Ball was always such a positive, pure, and unbelievable fun manga that it will forever be a masterpiece. From this comment, it's clear that the two were pretty close, hinting at their time while both were working within Weekly Shonen Jump, and I just love the casual way Katsura talks about the nights they'd spend together over the phone. It's the modern equivalent of speaking to your buddies over Discord or something like that. A lot of comments from this collab revere Toriyama or say how special Dragon Ball is as a manga, and while there are hints of that here, I think what really comes across most is the two's friendship. Alongside this collaboration and its comments, a lot of mangaka also made statements following Toriyama's passing. Katsura's is a deeply personal one and clearly shows his love for Toriyama, but I think reading that one and dissecting it would feel a bit too mechanical. It's something I thought I would mention exists though. Instead, in a more positive light, I want to point to the real reason why I wanted to make this video. Beyond a few interviews with the two and snippets about their relationship, Akira Toriyama and Masakazu Katsura have made manga together. Firstly, we have the one-shot Sachie-chan Guu from 2008, and then Jiya beginning in 2009 and lasting 3 chapters, with both being compiled into a single volume together. First off, let's look at Sachie-chan, and to accompany it, we also have an interview between the two which further expands on their friendship, as well as why and how this collaboration came to be. Sachie-chan Guu would be released in issue 5 of Jump SQ in May of 2008, Jump SQ, or Jump Square, being a side magazine of Weekly Shonen Jump featuring some serials on a monthly basis, as well as a space for one-shots much like Sachie-chan. The article tied to this release starts off with Toriyama explaining how it got made, referring to Katsura as an old war buddy, as well as someone he trusts, and much like me earlier, Toriyama finds the differences in their art styles to be intriguing. The manga all came together through their connections to each other, and Toriyama offhandedly saying he wouldn't mind making something new so long as he didn't have to draw it. With how beloved Toriyama is, anybody who has an idea of how to make Toriyama make something new would surely follow through with it, which was the case for Masahiko Ibaraki, the current editor-in-chief of Jump SQ at the time. It also likely would have helped the magazine, which had just begun a few months earlier after replacing Monthly Shonen Jump, to find a new audience, and what's a better way than to hook people in with a collaboration between two of Shonen Jump's biggest veterans. Despite Katsura thinking that this proposition was a joke initially, as he was, quote, trapped in Zetman hell at the time, Zetman being a series he was working on in Young Jump, the two did come together to make Sachie-chan a reality. While the two's art is generally quite different from one another, Katsura took this as an opportunity to try something new, going for a more super deformed style like Toriyama's, and the results are pretty cool. Immediately from page 1, I was taken aback at how different the art was from Katsura's usual stuff. The bold linework especially reminded me of something like Pantheon Stocking or Gurren Lagann. It's not Katsura-like and not Toriyama-like either, but other elements of detail, overall cuteness, and design sensibilities made me think of both of their art styles while reading, so analysing the art was a very fun experience for me. There's a simple poppiness to the style, it's inherently expressive and even more so with very animated expressions that both artists excel at. Elements of Toriyama shine through in the alien designs and background elements like alien houses as well as ships and technology. I think Katsura brings some fun dynamic shots and a bit of grit to the work overall too, making it feel wholly unique. There's some design materials and sketches done by Toriyama as well, which we have access to, showing us where his influences on the one-shot are. With it being a work Katsura is involved in, the question if anything erotic would show up was something I had, since that, along with Masked Heroes, has been his bread and butter. I would say Sachie-chan is restrained though. There's panty shots for sure, though they feel more funny if anything, and Sachie-chan's butt is kind of made relevant due to a birthmark that's important to the story and its message. That's where the story starts too, with some people in her class making fun of the birthmark she has that people point to and laugh, calling it a shit stain. For now, she brushes it off and heads home, only to be confronted by a UFO. Aliens then beam down to talk to her and are looking for someone called Momochi to help with trouble back on their planet, which turns out to be Sachie's dad, a ninja. She opts to go instead of her dad though, meeting our other character Zardid, and together they go on a short zany adventure where the two help fight the nefarious Mill clan who threaten the home of these aliens. While we're in the spaceship, we're also introduced to the plot thread that should they succeed in defending the aliens' home planet, Sachie and Zardid will get a reward from this magical catalogue provided by the aliens. The humour in this is pretty fun as well, contrasting Sachie's oblivious and hyper-energetic attitude with Zardid's more serious and mellow personality, as well as the aliens just being goofy little critters. Moments like Sachie decorating her shuriken or her needing to eat instant ramen to power up are very quirky and give the one-shot a lot of pep. It's cool to see this schoolgirl beat up some aliens and ultimately see them get spooked when they see her birthmark, which resembles the symbol of the Galactic Patrol who shortly show up. The end then sees Sachie re-evaluate her wish from the catalogue, first wanting to get rid of the birthmark, but then realising the wish could go towards something better for others. It remains lighthearted all the way until the end, and it's a ton of fun. Back to the interview, reading it you really get the sense that these are two people who really know each other and are comfortable with bickering, evident with how they talk about their creative decisions on the project. Katsura points out Toriyama was a bit of a pain to work with, since his script lacked the inclusion of any human themes, something Toriyama says he hates, preferring to make something silly instead. This could be seen with them arguing about the birthmark and Toriyama not wanting there to be any scenes involving Sachie being self-conscious, instead for the one-shot to be a bubbly stream of consciousness. I imagine similar to his one-shot works in Dr. Slump, but Katsura fought for there to be at least something there to depict some emotion, so we get an underlying message through the birthmark and a recontextualizing of it as a symbol when the Galactic Patrol are introduced, which I thought was pretty clever. Toriyama mentioning Katsura as his polar opposite makes a ton of sense too, having read both of their works. While Dragon Ball gets a little emotional at times, it's generally carefree, deaths don't carry much weight, the character's feelings aren't focused on a ton, and if you look at any one-shot of his or Dr. Slump, it's all silly little antics. Meanwhile, if you look at something like Video Girl Eye from Katsura, it's a pretty dense human drama. It's exceptionally melodramatic, in fact, full of characters misinterpreting things, causing all sorts of jumbled relationships between its cast. This contrast between them is also evident in how they talk to each other. Katsura speaks in longer sentences with a bit more eloquence, and Toriyama is quite blunt. This leads to a very funny interview, which I could easily see as a short manga in itself, or into a comedy sketch. They're a very funny duo. I came out of reading their interview with a newfound appreciation of both authors, their works, and how they work as artists. I don't think you usually get mangaka speaking so casually and so soulfully in standard interviews, berating each other, talking about the process they went through with each other. It feels very real, and I think that's because these two are great friends and know each other very well. Thankfully, this wouldn't be the only interview the two would do, and Sachie-chan Guu wouldn't be the only manga they'd make together either. Jiya would begin in the 2-3 combined issue of Young Jump in 2010, seeing Katsura and Toriyama join forces to pen another intergalactic story. Taking the idea of the Galactic Patrol and the designs from the end of Sachie-chan, we follow an actual Galactic Patrol agent this time who's been sent to Earth named Jiya. Earth isn't doing so hot though, with a bunch of it in ruins, the cause of which seems to be this vampire entity and a host of giant fleas. The planet is different from Jiya's intel, and he wonders why one of his comrades would fake a report. It's then he runs into two people going through some car trouble who get attacked by bandits, so he helps them out and asks for some info. We learn that Jiya's actual body is that of a tiny insect, which I adore a ton. This idea is super playful, it's silly and fits Toriyama to a T. And Jiya can control more than the suit, and hops into Kyumonji's body, one of the other characters of this short story, in order to blend in. He's a sensible person and a chauffeur to one of the other characters of this story, Miss Kaede, who is a raging alcoholic and the primary source of comedy for this story. Her interactions with Jiya and Kyumonji are great. Since Jiya is an alien, a lot of the jokes stem from miscommunications, like him thinking Kaede is a child because of her small breasts, which she obviously gets super worked up over. Usually I wouldn't be crazy about jokes like this, but I think in this case they're well told, and Kaede being this unhinged bundle of aggression and a bit of a girl failure makes it really funny. Since this is in Young Jump 2, it can be a bit more adult, with events like Jiya accidentally having sex in Kyumonji's body, which was apparently the first thing Toriyama ever thought of for this story, as well as alcohol being pivotal to the plot, so it comes up often. Eventually, Jiya puts everything together and works out that Steth, a Galactic Patrol member and comrade of his, must have hijacked a body similar to how Jiya did with Kyumonji and has taken over the planet for pleasure. It's a cool way to tie in all these sex and alcohol jokes into something substantial, as Jiya notes that humans feel pleasure and desire a lot more than his race does, something Steth got hooked on and seeks to experience more, so they did so by hijacking a vampire's body so they could feel immense pleasure through sucking blood. The final battle is pretty fun too, relying on the idea that Jiya's suit has been powered by water thus far, but when he runs out, Kaede gives him some of her alcohol, which she always has stashed on her, which causes Jiya to fight in Zuikon drunken boxing style. Jiya has such a great, well-constructed short story, and I loved how everything fit together really nicely. As well as the story, the art feels different and more mature from Sachie-chan, still opting to be super deformed and very Toriyama-esque, but elements of Katsura do pop up more. I think Jiya's design is a good example of the two styles melding, a quirky alien but also a masked hero. The more erotic elements also feel right at home in a work by Katsura, but also Toriyama too, who did get raunchy now and again in Dr.Slump. I really like how Jiya looks as well. All the character designs are great. Kaide in particular is a really neat character who even gets a couple of outfit swaps. There's also some great full-page art, like the ending page, which is a joke about Kaide asking if the King of the Galaxy can make her breasts bigger. It's just silly, and I love the juxtaposition with how pretty the image is of the crew driving off into the moonlit night. The interview accompanying this immediately starts with Katsura and Toriyama throwing friendly jabs at each other, which is a great tone setter. There's some really neat tidbits and conversation here looping back to the art. Toriyama requested it not be too detailed or too deformed like in Sachie-chan, asking Katsura to go back to a wingman-esque style. I'm not sure I fully see that, but I do like the different approach they took here, finding a middle ground they both liked and being inspired by the manga they were making during the period of their initial friendship, which is kinda sweet. There's a lot of reflection in both interviews I bring up today about how each author writes and draws, like in the case of how both depict their female characters. In Jiya, Katsura notes that finally Toriyama let Kaide be a bit more romantically inclined, letting the dere in his tsundere characters come out. It's these small changes like this that they illuminate within each other that show off their friendship in some lovely subtle ways. I also love all the goofy moments in these interviews too, like when Katsura calls Vegeta balding and Toriyama is adamant that he is not.
No, I'm not bald! I'm alive!
I laughed a lot reading that part. These collaborations and interviews are a joy to read, and the process of the two coming together to make something between them really lets you show what each value and what their personalities are. It's something I personally would like to do more with friends, since I think making things together is a great way to enhance your friendship, something which I think happened during the making of Sachie-chan and Jiya for these two knuckleheads. Before we end, some smaller things between the two which I think are neat is Wingman and Katsura showing up in chapter 212 of Dr. Slump. This is for a gag where Toriyama just takes a few pages to roast Katsura for living more rurally than he does. Senbei even goes and draws Bumpkin on Katsura's hat. It's really funny and the sort of shit you do with close friends just to mess around with them, except this was published in a weekly Shonen Jump and later in the volume releases of Dr. Slump for everyone to see their bickering together. There's also another interview just with Toriyama this time for Dragon Ball Daizenshu 6 movies and TV specials, in which he reveals where the idea of fusions come from, which was from Katsura. He states in the interview when asked where the concept of fusion came from, "If I remember correctly, I was talking about how, as a concept, there's nothing stronger than a Super Saiyan, and Katsura-kun, who I usually just joke around with and say idiotic things with, said, there's no choice but for them to fuse then. So I said, whoa, sometimes even you say something good. It's the first time you've ever made yourself useful." It's the way they talk about each other, joking around, casually making fun of each other in a playful and lighthearted way like this that really fills me with joy. Their friendship is palpable. It's really sweet, and I think more people should know about their friendship. It's good to know that these mangaka we adore so much are just as human as us sometimes. I think the connections between different authors is inherently interesting too, and I wouldn't have thought initially the person making Video Girl Ai and Dragon Ball, two widely different manga, could be such close friends. I highly recommend you check out these works by the both of them and the interviews, which I'll link in the description. Toriyama has a lot of other works beside Dragon Ball 2 which I'd love to talk about and will talk about in the future, like Kawa. I also think people should look into Masakazu Katsura. Video Girl Ai is great if you want a melodramatic 80s romance manga, but if that or ecchi things aren't for you, Zetman, which he was working on during these one-shots, might interest you since it's a more dark, transforming heroes type of series, I think. Though I'm sure it's filled with all sorts of nudity too. I haven't read it, so I can't say too much about it. I just think it looks quite different from his earlier romantic works. If you found this video interesting, then please consider liking the video and subscribing. I make all sorts of videos on manga on this channel, mostly on Shonen Jump, its history, or cancelled manga, but I do like branching out from time to time. Videos like this one are something I especially would like to make more of too. Just getting to know some of the more obscure history surrounding authors, their smaller works or interesting ones I haven't heard of is a blast. I think tackling videos through the lens of a certain idea, like the friendship between two authors, is also cool, so let me know if you'd like more of this type of video. I would be very grateful as well if you would consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps a ton and pushes me to make better videos as well as videos more frequently. You'll also get some cool bonus stuff like being thanked at the end of my videos, with you getting your own little doodle at the $3 tier, like Kinocha, Jade, Kaizuku Gairu, Soroquil Zero, Harley the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lay Sloggett, Chris P. Bacon, Chohenshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Weeby Boy, Wurzel, Valent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, and also AB, Wacko Drawers, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, and John Sanford at the $1 tier. Thank you all so much for being patrons. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.